So over the last few days, Russia struck Ukraine with missiles. Ukraine retaliated. Russia retaliated for the retaliation. And I'm going to try to explain why and what's happened. I spent a wildly disproportionate amount of my time reviewing Russian media, trying to understand why they're saying what they're saying. Now, I might have had it wrong about the motive. So there's two prevailing theories about the motive for the massive attack. One theory is that it's revenge for what just happened, sinking the ships the other day. And that was a pretty significant blow to Russia, even though the type of ship wasn't that important. The missiles on it, the sailors lost, that kind of thing. And the port being injured itself, there was a lot of bad that happened there. The other prevailing theory is that it's so that Putin can give his victory speech at the end of the year saying, see, I have these victories and look what we're doing to them. I'm not sure which it is, but either way, they're exchanging these things back and forth. So let's go back to yesterday. Russia says 20 dead after indiscriminate Ukraine strike on Belgorod. And when you get down into it, it says Russia said that 20 people, including 2 children, had been killed and 111 injured in indiscriminate Ukrainian strikes, allegedly including cluster bombs on the Russian provincial capital of Belgorod on Saturday, and vowed to retaliate. Now, this is coming from Reuters saying that Russia said this. That doesn't mean that that actually happened, but I mean, what happened, people were injured. We know that. But we don't know exactly what happened. It's probable that it came from Ukraine, but was it an indiscriminate attack or was it sloppy air defense, as the Ukrainians claimed? There's even a theory that it could be a false flag, but I don't know. I mean, you want to go with the most likely explanation rather than the wildest. Newspaper Kommersant cited a source close to the Russian investigative committee saying missiles fired from multiple rocket launcher in Ukraine's Kharkiv region had hit a skating rink on the central cathedral square, a shopping center, and residential buildings. Well, you shouldn't be firing on civilians. So if that is the case, then that's terrible on its face. However, no official comment was immediately available from Kyiv, but the Ukrainian news outlet RBC Ukraine quoted unnamed sources as saying Ukrainian forces had directly fired at military targets in Belgorod in response to the massive Russian bombardment of Ukraine's cities the previous day. News website Ukrainska Pravda quoted an unnamed security service source as blaming the destruction on civilian infrastructure on, quote, unprofessional actions by Russian air defense, as well as deliberate and planned provocations, which maybe there were deliberate provocations. Maybe they were trying to make the situation worse. Russia's mission to the United Nations in New York said it had requested a meeting of the Security Council, which began at 4 p.m. because of the attack on Belgorod. But what about what happened the day before when Russia launched the most massive airstrike of the entire war? And that's one of the fascinating things about this. They want to have it both ways. Here's Jake Bro. We're going to watch the first 3 minutes of Jake Bro because he's setting the table really nicely for what happened in the missile attack on the previous
Back
day.
defenders, Jake here. Ukraine had a rough night. Explosions in Kyiv as Russia launches massive attack across Ukraine. At least 30 people dead. Drones and missiles have been reported across the country in Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, Dnipro, and Lviv. At least 160 people have been injured, and a maternity hospital in Dnipro was struck by the Russians. This event was planned by Russia for weeks. The reason why is tomorrow night, Putin is going to give his annual New Year's Eve speech to the nation, and he wanted something to talk about.
Now, I hadn't thought about that. Jake might be right. I thought it was retaliation for the naval attack the other day. It doesn't really matter either way. Between either of those explanations or neither of those explanations, very bad things happened.
To lift up the spirits of the Russian people, given all their military failures, especially the last 2 months. And Ukraine's air defenses are really good. This winter is not a repeat of last winter. Ukraine is prepared. So in order to get anything through now, Russia had to overwhelm Ukraine's air defenses. So they spent weeks saving up their missiles, coordinating this all in one night, and they made it as complicated as possible, attacking from the south, the north, and the east. They launched Su-35 jets, Tupolev 95s, MiG-31s, Tupolev 22s, ground, air, and just given the volume, yes, some of them are going to get through.
And I think that's the best explanation for why they did such a concentrated attack. They actually spent $1.2 billion in this attack 2 nights ago, and that's okay. So they had a $75 billion defense budget for the year, and they spent 1.6% of it in one day. So that's the scale of that attack.
So 87 missiles were successfully intercepted in 27 drones, but 158 missiles and drones were launched, meaning about 44 got through Ukraine's air defense systems. They're really good, but a missile attack and a drone attack of this scale has never happened before in warfare for modern air defenses to handle. So I'm sure this was a learning lesson for everyone in the West, as Russia is struggling and has to get more creative in order to hit civilian targets. So let's go through some of Russia's great military victories.
Now, I'm showing you this part because I want you to hear what he has to say, because I'm going to show you RT in just a moment talking about how we just hit military targets. Listen to Jake very carefully.
The reason why Russia targets the major cities is they want video evidence. They want pictures and videos and screaming people, which is why they're not going after valid military targets out in the middle of nowhere. No one on social media then would see it. So they hit a hospital, a shopping center, a school, churches. And I'm going to link some videos down below so you can see some raw video of what happened this night. And with YouTube, especially these days, I have to be careful. There's a new policy given the war in Gaza, and it states right here that raw footage of ruins of destroyed buildings resulting from a violent event can't be shown. The video will be demonetized. It then won't be pushed in the algorithm. A lot of YouTubers that talk about Ukraine have been getting in trouble with this new policy. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to refer you to links in the pinned comment and the top of the description if you want to see raw footage, video. I think I can still show pictures as long as I'm not showing any dead bodies or injured people. So let's see if we can get through.
Okay, so I let him talk about that as well, because I've been talking about this in a different video about just where the gradations are of YouTube kind of issues. Some issues, like Jake was talking about, are, hey, this is just policy. And then some are just weird, like Warthog. That just seemed like something's not right with that, and there's perhaps a bot attack. A YouTube expert reached out to me, and he was a Googler who worked with that and said that was definitely a bot attack. So okay, at any rate, let's get back to the main story here. Okay, so here is Che Bose. Che Bose is on RT very often, and he said yesterday with the counterattack, the Ukraine attacking back, said the Ukrainian army, funded, led, and armed by NATO, has just bombed the civilian center of the Russian city of Belgorod. They have directly targeted the city center to kill innocent civilians. There's no military infrastructure here. I've been here myself. This is murder. Okay, and what you see here is only smoke because I paused the video because I'm not going to show it. So you can't actually tell, like you would think that was cloud if you didn't know any better, right? So I was just showing that to show this. Yes, there is some military infrastructure around Belgorod. It was not where that hit, but again, the Ukrainians are saying, well, that was the Russians being bad at air defense, shooting it down into its own center. We don't know exactly what happened. Now, I've got a full screen for reporting from Ukraine because I want you to hear this like less than a minute clip of what he had to say about what they targeted and where the air defense was, the Russian air defense around Belgorod. Listen to this, and it'll clarify some things for us.
Of the Belgorod region, precisely where Russians have a big military base. Such operations continued through the night till morning. During the day, several explosions were reported in the middle of Belgorod city. Ukrainian Special Force representatives reported that they did not have any targets inside the city and that the destruction was caused by the ineptitude of the Russian air defense operators. To be fair, Russian air defense operators indeed proved that they pose a much greater threat to their own aviation rather than Ukrainian, because over the last month, the Russian air defense destroyed 2 Russian fighter jets, killing all pilots. Russians also put the S-300 missile launchers, which they use both for strikes and air defense, right behind the city. So it is expected that Ukrainians would be aiming there.
Did you catch that? So if the Russians are actually using Belgorod like a shield, and the Ukrainians are trying to fire to knock out these air defense or actual missile launchers that they use for both air defense as well as to launch aggressive offensive attacks, then they have to expect that this could be in harm's way, but they don't seem to care about that. So that's what's happened here. Oh, I asked yesterday in my 3-minute update or my 3-story update, where was his outrage the day before? Well, I went to his website the day before, or his Twitter the day before. On December 29th, there was no outrage about what was happening in Ukraine. But there was this little gem. Liars hate the truth. I'm delighted to be listed as one of the top Kremlin narrators, according to the ironically named Ukrainian Center for Disinformation. I'm in good company with Scott Ritter and Doug McGregor, and here he is with two of the worst commentators on the war that exist. Okay, at any rate, that's all from him. Let's look at this little bit. Anton Gerashenko said, I no longer have a dad, or had this lady showing her saying, I no longer have a dad, I don't have a home, I have nothing else, only this dog. We're not going to be able to hear it. I'm going to read. Dad, unfortunately, was not saved. He died. They tried pulling him out only 1 o'clock in the morning and dug him out. That's all. My dad apparently was some kind of NATO mercenary and they hit him and killed him. Now I no longer have a dad. I have nothing else, only this dog. No cats, no dad, no house, no soul. Everything was torn by these blanks. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Now, I had to even hide some of that video for YouTube policy, but I could still read what the text was so you could understand when she was talking. Okay, and then we have this, Euromaidan Press. This is Oleska Verbovia, a primary classes teacher in Zaporizhia, who dedicated most of her life to her students. When Russia invaded, she stayed and continued teaching. Her home was hit by a Russian missile in the 29 record attack that killed 39 Ukrainians. This was just on the 29th, 2 days ago. She was only 53. She's now no longer with us, and that's because of this attack. But again, where was the outrage? Okay, just one more thing. This is a beautiful picture of a Christmas tree being illuminated with the background of the aftermath. Again, there's no raw footage here, so please don't demonetize me. Okay, so here's what RT had to say, and I'm going to cover up what's on the left side. It says unverified video anyway, but the left side, they claim to show what happened in Belgorod while this gentleman here on the right-hand side is talking. Now, I want you to hear what he has to say.
One civilian was killed indeed, and another 4 people, including a 10-year-old child, were wounded following a Ukrainian attack against Russian cities of Belgorod and Bryansk. Now, Kiev used multiple launch rocket systems and drones against these regions that share a border with Ukraine. Now, according to Belgorod governor, at least 10 houses and 2 vehicles were also damaged during that attack. Russian Defense Ministry said that the army's air defenses also managed to intercept 13 projectiles in the skies over Belgorod on Saturday.
Okay, so they intercepted, but did they hit them and then it fell, or we're not exactly clear. So that's what we just don't understand here. What I also don't understand is why this guy is speaking from the Donetsk Republic, which is actually the Donetsk Oblast in Ukraine. But look at the map here. This is Donetsk. This is Luhansk. Belgorod's up here. You're RT. Do you not have a correspondent in Russia somewhere? Like, I don't understand why he's got to be projecting from somewhere down in the Donetsk Oblast when he's actually in RT. Like, he's physically doing this for RT. Why are you in Donetsk? Okay, at any rate, with body armor on, nonetheless. Okay.
Monday morning, the military added that air defense forces also destroyed and intercepted another 32 Ukrainian drones over Bryansk, Oryol, Kursk, and Moscow regions. Now, the latest Ukrainian attack came after Moscow confirmed that it's conducted at least 50 group strikes and one massive strike against military targets in Ukraine using both high precision weapons and drones as well.
Okay, if Russia's using high precision weapons, they have to be the worst high precision weapons ever created because they're saying that they hit military targets, but they were wildly off the mark if that is precision, or they intended to do it, which is even worse.
According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the strikes were targeting Ukraine's military industrial complex as well.
Okay, so the Russians are claiming that the strikes were attacking Ukraine at the 29th strikes 2 days ago were attacking Russian military targets? Really?
Locations where artillery shells, unmanned boats, and fuel for military vehicles were stored. Now, officials in Kiev claimed that 30 people were killed and more than 160 were wounded in what it described as the largest raid since the beginning of the special military operation.
Okay, so enough of that. So were they actually hitting military targets? Here's what the ISW, the Institute for the Study of War, had to say about it. Russian forces conducted the largest series of missile and drone strikes against Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion on the morning of the 29th. President Zelensky reported that the Russian forces struck civilian infrastructure such as maternity hospital, educational institutions, a shopping center, a commercial warehouse, and residential buildings in cities throughout Ukraine. So somebody's not telling the truth, and I have my money on it being the Russians. Now, the hits keep coming because after Ukraine struck back and hit a number of places in Russia, including whatever happened in Belgorod, whether things were struck down or what, um, Russia's striking back from that. So here is today's news. Russia targets Ukraine military sites in retaliation for Belgorod attack. And they say this. Russia says, this is again December 31st, Russia says it has targeted Ukrainian military sites in the capital, Kyiv and Kharkiv, in a new wave of drone missile attacks in retaliation for a deadly attack the day earlier on the city of Belgorod. I think the city of Belgorod will probably factor in, and maybe it won't, into Putin's speech on his New Year's speech. The Russian Defense Ministry said on Sunday that it has struck decision-making centers and military installations in the northeastern city of Kharkiv after Kyiv said that residential buildings, a hotel, and cafe had been hit. That is one of the hotels. This is the Kharkiv Palace Hotel, and they're saying that that was a military installation or something along those lines. I don't know what they're thinking. Okay, that's all that we have today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.